the body is fueled by carbohydrates and a combination of fat and carbohydrates. Depending upon the pace at which you run, your body will decide the mix of whether to burn fat or whether to burn carbohydrates. A lot of us go to gyms, and many gyms have this treadmill where they have a graph and they show a line showing fat burning zone, and they tell you to keep your heart rate within that zone. And I mean, it is a fact. There's a science behind it. The science is that if you uh, exercise in an aerobic zone, aerobic meaning that with oxygen, with air, which means in a very simple way, you are running at a speed in which you can talk, you can have a conversation, you can hum a song, or you can do some maths, as you are going. Uh, your body is having a lot of oxygen, so when it has a lot of oxygen, it will prefer to use fat rather than carbohydrates as a principal source of energy. As you keep running faster, it needs more energy. It will burn more carbohydrates and lesser of fat because it has got less oxygen now because you're running faster. So more oxygen is going into your muscles, and you cannot replenish oxygen as fast enough because you aren't that well developed. So that is the basic principle. The amount of carbohydrates that you require will depend upon the type of training. So if you are doing very fast runs, then you will require more carbs. If you are doing very slow runs, then carbs will be lesser and more fat will be burned. Duration of training, again, because your body has a certain amount of carbs, about 1200 1400 calories is what your body has at any given point of time. So that will depend intensity, and then there are individual differences. People have different abilities to store carbs. Carbs are stored in the blood, this, and also in the muscles. So again, depending upon how much your body is able to hold carbs in the muscles, so your stores can vary from person to person. So the body uses three types of energy, three types of fuel. The first is ATP, something triphosphate, okay, and incidentally, a Indian, Chandrasekhar, is the person who discovered this substance. What ATP does is that ATP is the molecule that is in your muscles all the time. So I just raised my hand. Where did this energy come from? It didn't come from fat, or it didn't come from the glycogen in my bloodstream. It came from the ATP that was there in my shoulder muscles, and my muscles use that ATP to move my arms. So when you start running, your body first consumes the immediate stores of ATP, but the ATP has a very limited very limited capacity. So almost immediately, glycogen is being converted to ATP and being fed as fuel to the body. And as glycogen is in your bloodstream, as the glycogen starts getting depleted, the fat is withdrawn from wherever and hopefully desirable places, and and comes into glycogen, and glycogen goes to ATP, and then your muscles start using them. So that is the cycle by which your body keeps running for hours together. And it is said that if you have about 30 to 60 gram, which is 120 to 240 calories of carbohydrates an hour, then you can continuously keep enduring the activity. Carbohydrates themselves come of two simple things. One is very simple, and the other one is complex, often also referred to as high GI and low GI. People who have got diabetes or people who have diabetes will know that you should not have high glycemic index or food which is harmful for diabetes, and you should have low GI food which is desirable for people with sugar problems. So there are two types of carbs. The basic thing is that the simple carbs which are high in GI are absorbed faster into the body. So if you are running and if you are low on sugar, then we take glucon D, which is high GI sugar, or you take a fruit, or you take a date, or you take a chocolate, which are all things which are high in GI. Once you have replenish with high GI and you're feeling that your sugar levels have come back to normal, then you can have slow carbs, which would be things like a chapati or a rice, uh, or vegetables or fruits also, which when consumed with vegetables, which take longer to get absorbed and store for a longer period of time. So both these types of carbs are possible, and both of them replenish your blood glucose levels with the different purposes. So one to replenish immediately after a run or during a run, and one to replenish from a long-term storage point of view. This shows different, uh, different fuels that are used by the body in different activities. This is weightlifting, and the red is fat, and yellow is carbohydrate, the green is protein. You can see that in weightlifting, the body uses a lot of the fat as a source of fuel, whereas in 200-meter hurdles, which is a very fast anaerobic activity, which doesn't is not an endurance activity, the body uses the maximum amount of carbs because which is the faster fuel. The last one is endurance running, over marathon or this. Uh, the mix is more or less equal between carbs and fats. Again, it depends upon what speed you are running. So if you run slower, then your carbs will be more, fat will be used more than carbs, and vice versa. It also uses a lot of protein. You'll see that the protein is the highest there, because when you're carrying on that activity for 2 hours, your muscles are breaking down, and as they are breaking down, they need to be repaired. So a lot of the protein goes into building those muscles. So protein is also used in endurance running because of the length of activity. Whereas in most of the other ones, the activity is just about 15 minutes, half an hour. It's not a very long activity. The principle of carb loading is that if you store carbs in your body, then your body will release them faster, and you can create a bank of carbs, which you typically do before a endurance event. So the protocol, there are two types of protocol. One protocol, what people do typically, which is a wrong thing to do, is to have a pasta party the previous evening. This is a very big norm. It doesn't really cater to, it often does more harm than good, in my opinion, because having a large meal the previous evening is not desirable, because you need your bowels as clean and empty when you are running. You don't want to feel queasy in the middle of a run because you had a late dinner and a large dinner. So that's one thing, and the other thing is that the carbs have to be absorbed into the body over a period of time. It doesn't happen just you ate it yesterday and today it went into your body. It often still remains in the digestive tract and doesn't get absorbed. Whereas the correct way to do carb loading, if you want to do carb loading for an endurance event, is to start from at least a week before. And there are two ways. One is to deplete completely and then start carb loading, and the other is to just take a little bit, a little bit extra. In practical terms, you don't need to eat a lot. Again, as I've said, the body is a very efficient engine in terms of how much it uses, how much calories it burns. One extra chapati, one extra vati of rice, over 1 week is enough carb loading for even a full marathon. And a half marathon doesn't really require a carb loading, but many first time runners like to have that extra store in them, so that indulgence can be permitted. They are very scientifically, there's a lot of science behind each of these sports drinks. They often contain combinations of electrolytes, which are salts that you require, carbohydrates which are required for replenishment, and they also contain proteins. So they give a very ideal mix, because as the body is running and as it is damaging itself and subjecting itself to trauma, you require all of them: carbohydrates for the fuel, the salts and the minerals for, because you're losing them through your sweat, and proteins because your body needs to keep repairing itself. again, you need to try this sports drink when you're running, when you're having normal runs. Certain people can adapt to them well. Certain people like Gatorade. Certain people don't like Gatorade. Certain people like Lucozade. So some people have those kind of things. So it is desirable to have them when you're training, so that you know that in an actual event you can run with it. These are the other things that you require. One of the very important things is antioxidants. If you go to the net, you'll get foods with a lot of ORAC scores, as they are called, antioxidant scores. And the basic idea is that when you are running, you are taking in a lot of air, and the air and the carbon dioxide are mixing, and there is a lot of free radicals that are thrown out by the body, which are going around in your body. So while running is very healthy, it also throws out these free radicals which are not desirable, and the only way to counteract the free radicals is by taking in food that are high in antioxidants. So sometime back there was a press item that came that said that guava is the most healthy fruit. I don't know how many of you all remember reading that news item, but the only reason they said that guava is a very healthy fruit and a very nutritious fruit is because the antioxidant property of guava fruit, Peru, was the highest. Okay, so that was the only reason. So things like lime juice are very high in antioxidants. Most of the berries and fruits are very high. Basically, foods that are natural and are eaten raw are high in antioxidants, but between them they can vary in their scores. So many of us, after we get run, we get cough, or we say, my nose is blocked, or things like that. This is because probably often the amount of antioxidants in your diet is not sufficient, and your body is not able to deal with the free radicals because the antioxidant score is very low in your diet. The last part is recovery. Almost as soon as the event is over, you are going to be assuming that you have done it well. You're not had a party while you're running. You are going to be depleted from glycogen, and you should rehydrate yourself and put more glycogen back into your body as soon as possible. And at this point of time, you should have high GI foods, simple carbohydrates, so that they enter your body and enter your bloodstream as soon as possible. And some protein you should have. The ratio is 3:1. So three times carbohydrates and 1 time 75% carbohydrates and 25% protein meal.
What are the things that happen to you as a person who goes from a couch potato to a person who runs a marathon? Okay, your stroke volume is smaller because your cardiac muscle has not really developed well. You have initially, if you've been a couch potato, your resting pulse rate is high. In most people, it's around 70 beats per minute. But as you get fitter, the resting pulse rate comes down. Why does it come down? It comes down because the stroke volume of the heart goes up. You see, for every squeeze of the left ventricle, you are now pumping out more blood. If you're pumping out more blood, it means that the heart needs to beat a less number of times for the same output, right? You get me mathematically? So that's where fitness is seen in terms of your resting pulse rate coming down. It comes down from 70 to as low as 50 in a advanced full marathoner. So you get a whole 20 beats less, which means that really speaking now, the range available for the heart is much more. If your maximum heart rate is predefined, you cannot do anything about it. Okay, everybody has a max heart rate. You cannot cross your max heart rate. If you do, you die. So your max heart rate is fixed. Your resting pulse rate is known to you. If it's gone from 70 to 50, it means now the bandwidth available for you as a runner is much higher. You can do a lot more physical exercise or run a lot faster if you have that bandwidth available with you.